See, did I lie?
Well,
Ben, I'll steal a line from Mel Gibson. It does me good to see you, my friend.
oh, I would, if I could think of something else to say, I would say, but I think I'll just say ditto.
Hey, wide open. Don't forget, I told you I can edit. I just don't.
It's fair. Fair.
Hey,
Oh man, there's
here's
swag.
here's to you from the. Yeah, there's like three swag items, but I can't find any place I can afford. Which thank you by the way for the segue to host uh my store. I think I've got an idea now, but anybody, if you want to donate like a jelly bean or two at Venmo.com at Mitch Wonders, I'm up to $27.
Getting there.
Yeah, yeah.
Just got your
How you
overhead
doing,
covered.
young man?
Doing well. Young.
Where are you? Are you still in Kentucky?
Yeah, yeah, we're here.
Yeah, I'm in well, Austin, Texas.
Austin, right?
Yeah, I'm on the southwest side of Austin. I tell everybody if I go 20 minutes that way, I can be in downtown. If I go 20 minutes that way, I'm in Texas. So that's
That's,
that's
that's
the
fair. It's Austin. I think
yeah.
that's a fair
Yeah,
statement.
Austin is wow.
When did you move there from Washington or Washington?
Yeah, again, that's fair. Washington's fair. A little over 5 years ago, but I've
Okay.
lived in this condo for a little over 4 years, and I just got a dining room table, so I'm pretty excited.
What was it before? TV table?
My lap, basically, or the kitchen counter. So you know how it goes.
The man, I think that's how I would do things if I were, assume a single man, unmarried,
That's fair to us.
unmarried. Maybe.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
imply
How's you're married with children or child?
just one.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. I think you have a very strong
Yeah.
opinion on that, and we should.
I mean, everybody can have their own. We have found that it would be a lot easier to do our things that we need to do around the house if there was a play date. But at the same
Oh
time,
yeah.
and there's the other side of that too, where the raising, the rearing of the babies.
See,
So
that's where we had similar lifestyles because I too find it would be easier if I had someone around the house now and again. Do some of these damn chores. I didn't say that. That's it.
no, no. So you would have gotten that table, I think, a little bit sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you about the specs, afterward when we get off, we're not recording. I'll tell you about the specs for that table because those two relate. But I also feel like I should kind of apologize to you because this is I mean, something I've been wondering for a while. And what we're talking about today is, and I haven't heard this term used in a long time. I think it's fading away, but is well, it's not even just the millennial generation. It's the Gen X millennials and Gen Z generation. Are they now growing up to be potentially the next greatest generation?
And that's a when you mentioned this topic to me, I thought about it. I was like, I don't know about that. I mean, in the short term, in the 5 feet from your nose thing, you don't see
Yeah.
a lot of promise at times. You'd like to think
Well,
there
I
is,
mean,
because as a member, I'd like to think there's a great promise. But then
yeah, and like I
I don't
say,
think we've had
because
a,
I've, oh, go ahead.
let's say, the cataclysmic event of my generation was 9/11 as a high schooler. But
Well, I think just
what
before that, what they reference is the similarity and is a financial meltdown, like the Great
yeah,
Depression, and we had the Great Recession in '07,
mhm.
'08. And I'm telling you, that was deep. That was painful and scary.
Yeah, it was a great time finding a job at that time. It was awesome.
Yeah, yeah, because I remember I was working at a local company and just like divisions were being laid off. We were getting
Hmm.
instant messages. They're like, "Hey, they just cut that division." Like, what are you talking about, Steve? I'm married. Like, no, the whole department's gone. Like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah, mass exodus. I always wonder whatever happened to those people in those divisions. I
Well,
guess looking back, and
a lot came back, but I mean, a
yeah,
lot obviously, they don't want to. I mean, that's one of the reasons. Well, I don't want to get too deeply into it, but that was also interesting that time of year because it didn't help anything at all because I could, barely afford the home I'm living in, and raising two boys who were just oddly getting bigger because they ate like every day, but
hmm,
they kept growing and getting bigger. I'm like, I need a bigger house, and they're like, Yeah, we'll lend you 300 grand. What? When do you want to sign? I'm like, Wait, 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 wait.
this seems a bit.
That's too easy.
No,
I was like,
that's that.
yeah,
It's interesting because it's we. I didn't have to buy a house back then because I was still a young lad, but younger. Um, Not quite as old, maybe is a better way to say it. Uh, but
You're
Now
not
it's
gonna find a delicate way to say it.
no. I can try though. No, it when we went to buy a home, it's like so we bought one here. We used to live in an apartment here. Now we decided to buy a home in town, and I remember just thinking about it, like, oh man, I'm really nervous not to give us this loan. Yeah, I mean,
No.
maybe there's reason for that, but I don't know. It's just amazing to think that back then, all of 15 years ago, just hand out loans like, uh,
Oh yeah. And then then they blame it, on the people who got the loan. They blame the recession on that. They're like, "What? Well, wouldn't you?" I mean, I didn't obviously, but some
yeah,
people you offer them like quarter of a million. Like, I'll take that. Hell yeah.
yeah, why not? And then that's that, and everyone houses were a quarter million. That was good old days.
Well, I know, right? I mean, wow. I mean, like I said, I live in Austin, Texas. You ain't kidding. But luckily, I got my condo just before Elon moved to town, and all the influx of
Ah,
Microsoft and Google and Facebook and well Meta, but yeah, I got lucky
what do you use
because
property
I
like?
too was living. I was living in an apartment too when I moved to town, and I'm like, I think I'm ready to commit to Austin. Well, I wasn't really apparently since I just got a dining room table, but
That's a detail.
I know that's what everybody's telling me. Like, yeah, Tim, it sounds like he finally committed. I'm like, yeah, I guess. But I mean, what when I started looking into this because I was wondering about it, and I'm like, other people got to be thinking about this, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of people think about the same things I do because I'm like the most ordinary person I know. But I found, this one article. It was like, and I've never heard of Salon.com. I can't speak for their credibility, but they made good points about, Tom Brokaw back in '98 issued, he released a book called The Greatest Generation. And you've heard, and I don't know if you've seen it, Ben, but I looked it up. And, there's the Greatest Generation born before the Depression. There's another generation that I'll tell you about in a second. But then there's, we all hear about baby boomers, then to Gen X, then to millennials, then to Gen Z. Did you know there's another generation called the silent generation?
They just not talk about it.
See, I'd
I mean,
never even,
what age group? What age? Where did that start? Where's it?
yeah. Well, it's after the 1928 to 19, well, whenever the baby boomers started, 48.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So
So it's like,
it's that depression born. Is that what we call it, the
yeah,
depression generation?
it's like, yeah, just shut up, you guys. It's really bad. Just be quiet.
It's been,
But
we're not gonna. We got other things to worry about, like putting a piece of rice in our mouth once a day.
but like you were saying, it's like, you want to think about the stuff that people are saying about the millennial generation is not, and I know yourself, and I know my son, my kids, and I know a lot of their friends, they are not that type of, descriptive, lazy, I don't want to work, I sure don't want to work 8 hours, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And I don't hear that a lot, but I mean, also what you've got, these three generations together, not just the millennials, they're dealing with very similar things like the silent generation, I guess, or the greatest generation. There's the comparison they gave was, like we talked about, there's a definite similarity in economic strife. I know the Great Depression was a lot worse, but the
Mhm.
Great Recession was bad. But now you've got, they and when they were discussing all this, they were talking about, the stock market problems, the financial issues, the unrest, dealing with global warming. Still, we just did an
Mhm.
episode talking about how long. Well, in fact, it's released now. The current episode about 2024. People have been talking about global warming. That it was coined in the 50s. So we're still dealing with that, and this doesn't even take into account COVID, because this
Yeah.
article didn't even bring up COVID. They're talking about, the comparison between the presidential races now with between Herbert Hoover back then and kind of failed, but then FDR took over, and then like he had the economic issues. Barack did a great job trying to get us out of it, and then we are where we are now. But the depression didn't end for the previous generation, the greatest generation, until World War II. Because you've heard the phrase, nothing helps an economy like a good war, and it did.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I don't know if we're at a point an economic impasse where I hope not. I hope not approaching it where a good war is needed to straighten things out.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I'd like to think
exactly.
we've been. I mean, well, you could say that we've been at war for 20 some 21 years, 22 years at this point. Um, I
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
call that one
agree.
that's a rally. It's not a rallying war, though. It's a Vietnam war, but
Well, I think
more
the rallying
Vietnam-esque.
point, yeah, it is because they talk about a nation divided, and I've talked about before on this podcast about you want to see a divided nation. I grew up in the Vietnam era. I was
Hmm.
born in the early '60s. It's like that's a nation divided. This is not good, but it's not nearly. I
No,
mean, the similarities again, like like we talked about, Mark Twain's quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes," and kind of what we're doing now. It's not a repeat; it's kind
yeah,
of a rhyme.
that's. I mean, that's you think about the geopolitical stuff. I don't know if I didn't grow up. I didn't know the Cold War beyond. We did some civil defense drills when I was in first and second grade, maybe close to
Yep.
an air base. But beyond that, um, I don't know if the geopolitical climate. I feel like it's not as tense as it maybe seems to be at times, but other times when you see everything going on in the Middle East,
Yeah.
it's like and the alliances that are starting to play out and develop and expansion of the pressing for expansion, the worry for expansion of other countries into blocks of the world. I don't know. It's
I,
one of those things. I
I
hope it
like
never
the
gets to that point. But
No, I agree completely, and I also like your correlation of the major event that happened in your lifetime and your young lifetime was 9/11, but that also that lingered as a rallying cry for some people
yeah,
of your generation, especially those that chose to, I'm going to the military. I'm going to do what I can to make sure this doesn't, it was very impressive, what I saw.
mm-hmm.
Um, from that the generations that went. I can't even say, I don't want to say which one. It's just the younger generation, because but what they're saying now is it's the lingering hardships that you're facing, that you're
Mm-hmm.
up against, from a massive economic setback, like as you're the three generations, post my generation. And again, I feel like I should apologize. I'm not going to do it, but I feel like I should apologize, especially for Social Security. I'm not going to say anything.
Hey, you're welcome. I tell my
But
dad that every time
but
he gets his check. Like he's welcome for that.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll again. We mentioned that in this week's episode. So if you get a chance to listen to one, listen this week. You're going to be all right. Um,
Okay.
but it's also kind of as they're, the younger generations are settling into adulthood. It's all
Mm-hmm.
this. I'll say I can't think of a better way to say it. All this shit coming at you. It's a recession. It's a cataclysmic event like 9/11. It's a pan freaking demic, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
It's it's
that
it's
was something.
it just
But
keeps coming, and
yeah, I mean, I think that uh, I don't know. The COVID thing was always odd because I feel like there's a certain age range that really cared a lot. Some people that were very conscious of it, but like, we can be a little bit flexible because we're the privilege of being youthful, at least thinking we are. And then there's the people who just don't know. Like my kid did, he just did what we told him and kind of had questions. We explained what was happening. Um, Fortunately, we could do it in a medical way that he understood, but also was factually based. But then you have the people who protested and the really people who were really passionate about it. And I don't know if that was in my age group or maybe somewhere between you and me, implying
I
that
can
you are
just
older than me. Um, but although you look
these
much too
facts shall
youthful, by the
these
way.
these facts shall become self-evident, as they say.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, I
Um,
just recall because Joe Rogan, who is a neighbor now, by the way, he
yeah, right
he
next
he
door.
mentioned that. Yeah, basically. I mean, he's like 5 miles that way, up by where Sandra Bullock lives, and not by Matthew McConaughey, but all neighbors. I'm just throwing some
Man,
names. No
oh,
big deal.
neighbors. Oh man, gosh, I hope
And
I'm
Elon.
just can I do a
I've seen
search?
it.
Can I do
I've
a
seen.
search of those big names
Oh
and
yeah.
like stop and
Well,
I think it'll
I
just be
wish
tied to
Sandra
those.
Bullock would. She should listen to this because we're definitely age appropriate, and I think we would be just. I mean, I got a dining room
Yeah,
table,
gears
but
would mesh. I mean, what can do you have chairs? Are they folding chairs? Are they permanently affixed
oh,
in shape?
I should so they're very nice chairs. And now I just feel that much more lonely because I eat dinner at my lonely table. But
And she has a
anyway,
table.
uh, but you're wondering about the age group because Joe Rogan brought up yesterday. Of course, I'm watching the clip on YouTube because I don't have the patience for anything anymore. But
No.
Joe Rogan was saying like Bill Burr would I'll get one just pointing it out because he's like my age group. You were asking about, and he was like yelling out his front door across the yard. He's like, "What? No mask?" Like that. So those are the people that were a little boisterous about it.
Yeah, yeah. There was definitely that. I don't know. I didn't really. I never saw any kind of. And I was never approached about it when I would or would not choose to. But we're also in
But do you
Kentucky,
think?
so
Well, it's also. I mean,
there's that.
yeah. There's a lot of things I could say. Well, Texas is kind of wide open. It's like I think we were the second state to go, the hell with this mask mandate because Florida
Mhm.
was first. I know that, but
Right.
do you think like your generation, like you said, you don't like to think of it, the fact that not just your generation, but the two on bookending you uh, are rising up. I mean, you're not you're not just taking it. You can't sit back and just take these hurdles, these headwinds that come at you. I think it's causing a lot of people to be stronger, more resilient, and
Hmm.
definitely buck the popular opinion.
I think it's fair, and I don't want to sound like one of those conceited types within those three generations, but I think there are things that we our age group does do um, differently, whether for good or for bad, I don't know. But
Mhm.
instead of just expressing feelings, but there's just like there's just my sister's very close, tied into she's a psychologist, so she's very tied into thought processes and what it actually means scientifically. And I think that when we talk about it, like realizing certain things are real, there's a reason we people respond a certain way and feel these certain things can be backed up. But then you also have to. I think my big push is always you got to still keep going. You can't just stop and wallow in the feelings. You know, you can't just.
Or listen to you. Or do you live in Kentucky?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you can't. You have to like acknowledge them. We always tell our students you have to acknowledge that these are real. You can't say they're not real, but you can't let that stop you from progressing. Like, you got to keep going, and it's just this kind of reflective time. But you can't stop. Just because a race gets hard and your
Absolutely.
body hurts doesn't mean you can stop running. I mean, it's effectively what
It's a great
it
point.
is.
Well,
And,
and
and
my son, I was talking with him the other day. It's because some of the things that he's done, I jokingly tell him like your resume is like a presidential candidate's resume. I would never wish that on you, but but a lot of the stuff that he said he's been working through, it's like just like you said, it's like you can't stop. I mean, there's you just got to keep going. You got to take it, keep going. Like that stupid, not stupid. It's a good clip by Sylvester Stallone, but he's like, life will hit you. It's just it's not how much you can take. It's how much you can take and still keep going.
I think that's a great quote, James, from a movie. But is it from a movie, or was it actually something he made up, or somebody else write it
It's from
for
the
him?
movie. It's from one
I
of the Rockies,
I
one of the
forget. Yeah,
12
that's where I've
Rockies.
heard it. Man, I think one of number 13 is coming out. When Apollo Creed's grandson's born, and starts
Gosh,
fighting.
I think Creed 3 was sad, but anyway, but
Um,
I wanted it to be great, but I think what the correlation though that we see between the quote unquote greatest generation and now is the inflection point because after
mhm,
the bomb drops on Japan, it was like the nuclear era, and they're the greatest generation and their elders knew the gravity of the situation, and
mhm,
they were able to kind of like hold off like a nuclear Armageddon, and
yeah,
and behave responsibly despite some close calls like we saw the Cuban Missile Crisis, of course,
yeah,
but close calls in subsequent decades, and you're seeing that like you say too, like this generation's handling responsibly. It's a big deal, and we could have,
mhm.
there could be extenuating circumstances. It could be a lot worse, but you're not letting it happen. You're not you're
No, and
you're not
that's
just taking it.
and that's something that I guess that as you say that, I mean, the individuals and the groups of individuals generationally can do a certain thing, but I don't think yet the Xers through the Zers
Is
disease
is
are at a point of decision making for society. It's still the say the boomer generation. It's still some very
Yeah.
young silent generation. I think people that are still kind of making decisions that affect all these things. So I'm curious to see as people age out of life and uh, the Xers and all that stuff can continue to age and into these positions of authority of decision making for more than just day to day stuff in our households. How that actually affects things. Um, I'm curious and scared, but I think it'll be something that's interesting as things progress. I guess I'd like to think everything will be great and happy, and yay, but who knows? Because then you hear people talk, and it's like, man, I hope this person ages out of that choice um, before they
Yeah.
start
Well,
impacting
as you're
society.
saying that, that's a great country song, by the way, by a local Texas guy named John Wolf. He's actually from Oklahoma. We're gonna let him off the hook,
Yeah, that's fine.
but
Close enough.
his song is when the good old boys age out, the good old days are gone. But conversely, what you're saying is like what we're seeing in the presidential race. You got two guys in their going to be in their 80s, really, as the lead contenders.
Yeah.
We need some young energy. I really think we do.
Hmm. I agree completely, and it is young perspective. Not that anything is wrong with age and wisdom that comes with age. Um,
Right.
I forget who said it. It's a shame that youth is wasted on the young. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but
I mean, because that's another episode coming up. It's like how do we learn? It's like how do we get good? And unfortunately, some of the things I think it was not Malcolm Forbes, but Malcolm somebody Gladwell. He's got the book about 10,000 hours. It takes 10,000 hours at anything to be good or an expert or the best. That's just his way of saying it takes time.
mhm. And that's I guess that's part of life. It's part of the process, right? Um, so that'll be.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see how things evolve. I'm curious to see how certain uh, and organizations evolve, administrations evolve. I mean, even for our private companies, private so to speak, not public employees. Um, I'm curious to see how that evolves with leadership changes, with the generational changes in leadership. I mean, and there are some. I think there are some really good things that are going to come and are on the way as far as the generations change. I think, and this is going to sound like a millennial here, but I think that the our younger generations are like much less. I don't know, a lot more. There's a lot more. I think thought diversity, perhaps, or there's a lot more willingness to hear it. Only because I spoke, because that's with age, right? Like as you age, I know because my dad is uh, in the boomers. He's a young boomer. He's not old boomer. I'm sorry, um, but he
how do you
is.
refer to
Let's
that?
see, he's 71.
Well, he's an old boomer then. I'm a young
Yeah,
boomer.
yeah.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go.
All right. Also, I just got you in that trap. Glad we got there. Um,
But you're right though. It's like because the open mindedness, and I've done an episode discuss because I meet a lot of people. And I'm now I'm a senior citizen kind of at my workplace, but I've got a lot of friends, like yourself, and in the general. And I did an episode recently with my friend named Anna from New York City, who's in Gen Z, and same thing with Nia. We're discussing openness regarding work hours, openness regarding work life balance, openness regarding uh, appreciation of it's not all about work. Like, back in the day, like you asked your dad, it's like head down, do good work, get a
oh yeah,
paycheck, and go back and do it the next day.
and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's all part of it. If you look at I was talking with a doctor one time about this, the evolution of generations, the silent generation, keep your head down, do your work, and that transition to the greatest generation of go fight the Nazis and win. Um, uh, but then there was no time to do that, just to stop and like, all right, what did we just do? It was we it was all
Yeah,
right. Now we have to
that's a
continue to
good
build the
point.
society, and the U.S. is a nation that became the hegemony. Man, you should edit that one because I would have rather said it right the first time. Um,
It's a keeper now. Now just because
but
of that.
but as the U.S. transitioned to the hegemony world, um, you had this transition of all this other stuff, but there's no time to stop. The subdivisions came in, the housing, and all the other things, and population blew up. Um,
It's a very good
there's no
point.
time to stop and think and process that. I think we are, I'm going to use the P word here, privileged to have the time to live in a
I
peace,
would have that. I was at that.
to live in a peacetime of sorts, relatively speaking, and not having had 20
Yeah.
years of a complete mess to deal with and work through. And so we've had
Well,
time to process. We didn't have to worry about the Vietnam draft uh, and all that comes with that.
yeah.
And
Thank you.
that's something that my father did have to worry about at his age. It's like, all right, going to the draft potentially.
I did too.
Um,
I had to register at 16. And I couldn't get to see a rated R movie, but I could go to war. It's like, come
yeah,
on.
dude, I have a lot of thoughts on that over whiskey, um, but just that whole thought process. But anyway, um, Now, I think that we've been fortunate to not have to do that. So we've been able to think about the feelings and I think being more flexible and all these things, which I don't know if other generations have had the fortune to do,
No, no,
right
and
or
like you
wrong.
say, I think this is a real inflection point. It's
Mhm.
and the fact that's why I wanted to talk about it because I think there's so much and like you say, we have the chance to think big picture. What we're doing now is going to impact a lot of generations moving forward. Because even FDR, when he got his second term, or it was like a landslide elected to his second term, he had a quote in there. He said, "There's a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generations of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny." And I think it was true then, and I think it's maybe not as much now, but it's definitely true now.
It's fair. I'm curious to know how that goes, what that destiny is, because I mean, because destiny isn't always a good thing. I don't think it's a
Oh, you're living it. You're living it. You're
yeah,
impacting it right now.
yeah. So that's important. I think everybody, if people are mindful of that. I think it hopefully will change and affect how intentionally you live your life. I mean, that's with having the fortune of having a child that we talked about. Oh, it's a pain in the ass. Pardon my French. Actually, it was English,
Well, the French went
but
out the window on
yeah,
episode one. Trust me.
okay. Well, that's good then. But having him being able to impact him and with the nuances of the world. And again, not having to worry about the Cold War. I mean, and
Little stuff
all
like
that
that,
stuff,
right?
all that P word stuff that we
Privilege, just the way.
privilege. Yes, all that privilege we have to be able to talk through him and talk through his feelings and make sure he is emotionally aware of himself. Again, we can't stop, but being able to explain the world to him, like I don't necessarily believe how the world was explained to me in the same with the same nuance that we try to explain it to him and kind of help him figure out for himself what he believes, um, but also kind of influence that to what we would like to see out of him in the world as well. So and
I think it's
it's
great.
something
I
that I
mean,
think
it's great.
that parents can do and hope they are doing more of with our age group um, as they
I
do
like to
age into
think so.
parenthood.
I mean, just using my kids and yourself, like I say, as the example, I think the message is being shared, but I also think that's a great way to wrap this episode up with the focus on living. I think, as you said, intentionally.
Mhm. I think that's what we try to do. Sometimes get a bit squirrely, but I think living with intention and doing being intentional is something I like to see.
You're nailing it. You can get a bit squirrely, live intentionally. I mean, I'm not now. I don't know what to call this episode. I've got like three titles in mind now.
Excellent. I'm excited to see the options, the
Well, thank
focus
you very
group.
much, Ben. I appreciate you sitting in with me today. It's been great seeing you again. I was just joking
Absolutely, man.
about no, I'm not. Just you getting older. It's not older. You're looking more statuesque. How about that?
Aged, wiser,
Wizened.
wizened, a
But,
good
but thank you,
whiskey.
Ben, and thank you. Oh, we should talk. We should have an episode like that. I think you can see that now in the background.
Oh,
We're
there we
we're
go.
yeah. It's been a good life, but always good talking to you, Ben. Hopefully we can talk together soon. And thanks again for sitting in with me. Thanks for taking some time.
Absolutely, Tim. Appreciate it, man.
Okay. Okay. Take it easy.